task other hole that I got to be honest with you, on Tuesday night, I was a little conflicted with that Mount St. Mary's thing going on in the honor of the great Jim Phelan, who was always such a magnanimous and wonderful dude, and friends of ours from out in Emmitsburg, and I have a couple pals that are grads out there, so congratulations. But also, the Capitals were playing and trying to get off the schneid from just a horrific effort out in California. Ed Frankovic and I lamented that on Monday around here. And Ed, I'll tell you this, man, that flight back from California, and I know we have head coach Barry Trotz joining us next Monday night at a Greenmount Station in Hampstead. We'll have some crab cakes, lightly fried. Thank you very much, Chris. And my thought was, my God, I hope they're not on like a 7-game bender, right? I mean, like at some point, Ovechkin's got to score. At some point, they got to win. And they didn't just do that. They did that against a team that has aspirations of coming back in June and playing in the Stanley Cup Finals here, right?
Yeah, we heard all road trip, and that flight is horrible. And Coach Trotz, after the game on Tuesday night, basically said, this is like another road game. We didn't get back, and we had to turn around. The Wild were actually in here waiting for them, but the big story was the Capitals' top players were their top players, which was not the case when they were in California. And Ovechkin scored, and Backstrom had 3 assists, and Holtby was great early, and the defense played well. Carlson had a big game. It was back to the Capitals we saw back in January and early February.
Well, and getting a lead is important, right? And the lead kind of came, toward the close, and now you got a 1-0 lead. Now what do you do with it? And for me, the game felt in control, right? I mean, it's 3-0. They're on cruise control. They did let them back in the third period. My buddy Paul Allen calls the games up there in Minnesota. Started, what should I say, shatting upon me or Shattenkirking on me on Twitter. From Minnesota about, hey, we're back in this one, and I didn't like that part of it, and I'm sure Trotz probably didn't like that part of it at the end either, because there had to be some thoughts, well, maybe their legs are a little tired. I know Coach Trotz addressed that in the postgame.
Yeah, they played so well in that second period. They really dominated. It could have been more, and I really liked the way that Tom Wilson stood up for Orpik. When we were up there, you and I were up in Game 3 up in Philly last year, there was a big hit by Ryan White. I thought was a charge, concussed Brooks Orpik, and that you could argue that changed the whole course of the Capitals' playoffs. Because,
absolutely.
Orpik was never the same. He took the bad penalty in Game 2 against Pittsburgh, and it's 3-0. The Capitals are really sticking it to the Wild. And Ryan White, a former Flyer, now with the Wild, starts running around. He puts a big hit on Wilson, and then he really came up high on Orpik. I really thought the elbow got into Orpik's head. And Wilson said, enough of that. And Wilson beat the stuffing out of him. Ends up getting an instigator. And the
misconduct, the whole deal. Yeah, I mean, he got the full red card.
He got the full treatment. So he goes to the box, but the Capitals, that seemed to inspire the Capitals because they killed that penalty pretty easily, and they almost made it 4-0 there at the end of the period. I mean, they were really skating. I mean, I was like, wow, this is the intensity fire we need to see from these guys.
Boy, hockey's got some unwritten rules, right? I mean, we talk about baseball's unwritten rules, and look, you know how I feel about the fighting thing. Trotz knows how I feel about the fighting thing. We could bring it up again on Monday night. Gary Bettman knows how I feel about the fighting thing because I was documented when he sat in the window with me up at Mickey Mantle's 20 years ago. I just think it's a bad look. I mean, and I'll continue to say I think it's a bad look. I think it's a bad look for your kids, quite frankly. But, it is part of the game, as they say, right? And, and the unwritten rule is you ran on our guy in the playoffs last year. Now you're running around here when you're getting your ass kicked and you want to fight, so let's go, right? What was it, want to go? Okay, that's what that was. But that is sort of old school hockey, and we don't see as much of the long memory as maybe we even do in baseball, where I'm sure the Machado-Donaldson thing will boil up when Machado's a Yankee 4 years from now or something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't like the fighting either, Ness. I'll be honest. I don't like it, but they feel they need to keep it in the game for instances like that, and that's one of those instances where I think, if you can't fight, what are you going to do? What can you do to that guy right there when he's running around like an idiot like that? It's the Flyer DNA in his body. They're losing.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it? There's two types of people in the world. There's Flyers and there's everybody else.
That's right.
I saw you making nice with the biggest Flyers goon in history last week in the press box at the Cap Center. So I'm calling you out on that right now in front of all of your friends.
Yeah, Dave's a different guy, when he's off the ice. But in Dave's defense, he played by the code, right? I mean, Dave Brown was not a dirty player when he played hockey. Dave Brown was your Marty McSorley or your Semenko to Gretzky, right?
Right, you're not going to mess with Tim Kerr or Brian Propp because of me. Right, that's what it was.
Exactly.
Right? That's exactly what it was.
Dave Brown had his role, and Dave Brown worked hard, became a decent hockey player. But some of these other guys, those other Flyers, boy, well, we can go down the list. But I was totally fine with that, mainly because what happened on that road trip, and we talked about this Monday. The Caps were not focused on hockey in California, and Brooks Orpik called the team out. And when you see something like that, that tells me they got dialed back in. That meeting they had after the game on Sunday night in Anaheim when they lost.
Dude, that's no fun at all, and especially for a team that's used to winning, right? I mean, there's nothing about the weekend. I mean, by the time they woke up on Sunday morning and the brooms were out on them and the plane had gas to get home and then they got their ass kicked again, probably worse on Sunday night, literally. There's no way you get on that plane in that brotherhood and that's peaceful. That's not peaceful, man. It's just not. I mean, no matter how big your lead is, I've been around sports my whole life. That's a really, really ugly, rough go. And, if Ross Greenberg were there documenting it, I'm sure, it's not peaches and cream. And I'm sure some harsh words are spoken in that circle because that's unacceptable to go out to California and get your ass kicked like that. It really is.
It definitely we're not dialed in on hockey. We saw the pictures all over Instagram, guys at Universal Studios, all the parks out there doing all, out in the nightlife. And, it was a disaster, and they needed to get refocused, and Brooks Orpik stood up, and who knows, maybe in a couple months we're going to look back on that trip and that statement as the turning point. And
I'm going to talk to Trotz about this, by the way, about the whole California thing, because it's going to be really interesting to get a lot of insight from him. Because one thing, dude, he's always honest with us. You know what I mean? Like there's not going to be some Dan Snyder kind of spin on how he feels about California. I mean, matter of fact, I have a feeling he'll be rather harsh when we get together with him on Monday. And hopefully they're on a 3-game winning streak, right? I mean, that is the goal here between now and Monday when we get together with the coaches, that the team's going in the right direction. And, certainly the boat steered in that direction on Tuesday night for long stretches. They felt like a dominant team again all of a sudden.
Well, I think it's going to be really important to hear what he says next week. And I think it will be harsher when we see him on Monday. But what I liked about what he did after the game on Sunday night in the presser, he was incredibly calm. I watched that. I watched it twice, actually, his post-game presser from Anaheim, thinking he's mad. He's got to be ticked. He's got to be upset the way they played. This trip went terrible. He was about as calm as he could be in that presser. And, he pointed out the things they needed to do. He didn't call anybody out. Just basically said, some what went wrong in the game. And, sometimes you need a coach to step up and snap, and the coach in Calgary certainly did that a few weeks ago in Montreal, and they're on a 10-game winning streak right now. And sometimes you need the coach when things are going bad to stay calm and keep.
I bet he would say, and I bet he will say to us about that, you know what? I got a room full of leaders there. Those guys have won 80% of their games for the last 2 years. We all lost together in Pittsburgh last year. We all know what that feels like, and that's what the plane ride felt like. I don't need to say anything that this is unacceptable. You know what I mean? For everyone, if they measure themselves, if you are a believer that all of them really want their name etched on that cup, that they know that what happened out there was not good enough and will be memorable for them when they're on a plane ride back from Pittsburgh, down 2-1 or 2-2 or up 2-1 or whatever it'll be, because those days are coming. The beards are coming, the hard times are coming, the bright lights are coming, the measuring stick, the boo birds, all of the haters, all of the Caps will never win, all the things the Cubs have dealt with, all the things the Red Sox used to deal with, all the things the city of Cleveland has dealt with, right? They're going to be dealing with that. This is heavy. They're carrying that boulder for Gartner and Langway and Brian Murray and you and me and, every other person that's always, and Leon's just all the way up the hill. And, boy, that flight back from California, I think, that it wasn't up to anyone's standards, and I don't think anyone with standards would say it was, right?
No, definitely not, and the pressure will be massive. You're absolutely right. It will be massive. It's on Ovechkin clearly, and the stars of this team, Backstrom and Ovechkin, they've been the guys.
And Hopi. I don't want to hear that the other goalie was better. You know what I mean? Like, we've had a lot of that, and it hasn't been Hopi's fault, but, I mean, up in Montreal a number of years ago, Pittsburgh last year, there can be no excuses. And I don't think there will be any excuses. There weren't any excuses when they lost to the Rangers. And when they lost to the Penguins, it's the better team won. They were better than us this week. But getting them healthy, getting them right, and look, man, I've written a couple of books on championship teams. There's always the bump in the road, right? Remember Joe Flacco, laying out flat, in the Denver game here, right? And 7 weeks later, he's a Super Bowl champion. So, we know how good they can be. They showed it again on Tuesday night. They have an on and an off switch, and I'm guessing the off switch was, the hey, we're going to California switch was on last weekend. I've been guilty of that in the past, Ed, but I haven't had to go out there and win 3 hockey games in 4 nights.
I think that bump in the road point is very good. I mean, the Ravens, the first Super Bowl, 5 weeks without a touchdown. The next time, that you mentioned the Flacco falling in Denver, they were 9-2. They lost 3. They had some injuries. They lost to the Redskins, Steelers, I think, to a backup quarterback, and they lost.
Bernard Pollard's in there fighting with the quarterback. Yeah, I mean they had some upheaval around there. They fired their offensive coordinator. I mean, they fired their offensive coordinator in December and won the Super Bowl in January. I mean, things happen. Bad things. Look at where we are with the Terps, too, right? I mean, bad things happen to them at the end. Now it's, what are you going to do when it counts? What are you going to do when it matters? Are you going to get down to Florida and survive the weekend, or are you not? With the Capitals, this was the preseason, and I think maybe they didn't take that part of the schedule seriously, but, the awakening was there, and again, we're very aware of what they're capable of, right? The track record speaks for itself. So I'm not going to get dismayed by the California thing, but I think it was some cold water for them. And, that's not a bad little dose of reality for them to get a couple of weeks before the games do matter.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think that month where they were 5-6-1 coming out of the bye week is going to ultimately be good for them. And my good friends over at Japers Rink, they put out a piece the other day and chronicled the last 10 winners. Every one of those teams had a losing streak somewhere along the way. And you remember last year the Capitals never had a losing streak. They never lost 2 games in a row in regulation. They didn't have a 3-game losing streak till they lost in the playoffs. So get it out of the way. It was pretty clear Tuesday night that these guys were.
That's an unbelievable stat, dude. I don't sit back and get dreamy-eyed about last year's season because it didn't end well. Matter of fact, I probably had more fun, the year they lost to the Rangers. I mean, that was one of the most unbelievable sporting events I've ever attended. A Game 7 overtime in Madison Square Garden. I mean, it didn't go well, but it was a great memory. There was nothing I remember about last year that's particularly memorable, but that's an incredible stat, right? Like we're seeing what the Golden State Warriors have done over the last couple of years, what the New England Patriots have amassed over 15 years, and I know they're cheating, so it's different with them. But with the Capitals, you don't think of last year as being, dude, that'll never be done again. They didn't lose 2 games in a row on the road till they were eliminated. I mean, that's an insane expectation for any team, right? It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible season, and they never really hit a bump in the road, and they didn't hit it till the playoffs. And looking back on it, they, like you said earlier, they got beat by a better team. Pittsburgh was just deeper, and McClellan went out and addressed the holes with Eller and Connolly, and now Shattenkirk's in.
And there is also something about the stars not shining. At some point, Ovechkin needs to have a hat trick, and Backstrom needs to be involved in that, and Holtby needs to stand on his head and win a game 1-0 just because, right? I mean, when that happens for teams, that's how they advance. That didn't happen for the Caps last year. It happened for the Penguins, and we're all crossing our fingers because we know how that puck bounces, bro.
Well, we've seen Lundqvist do it to us so many times and change the series. So, yeah, I agree totally. Holtby's going to have to steal some games, and they just got to get back to playing the way that they need to. And they did that on Tuesday night. They were really skating. I mean, I haven't seen them go up and down the ice in 5-man units like that since before the break. And the defense was very active, and they had Carlson, Orlov, Niskanen, and Schmidt. Schmidt was in. those guys had 12 shots on net of the 40. So they were getting the back end, was coming up and giving the pressure, and they were able to really dominate the play. And that was what we saw before the bye week. We hadn't seen a game like that. We saw bits of it in the Ranger game when they beat them a couple weeks ago up there at Madison Square Garden, but we hadn't seen it consistently for a game. And when they hit that bump in the road early in the third period and the Wild cut it to 3-2, the Wild got another power play, and the Capitals didn't even give them a shot on net. And the rest of the way, it was all Capitals. I don't even think the Wild came close to tying the game. Then Jay Beagle, makes it 4-2, and they pretty much cruised down the stretch. That's the way you want to close the game out. And that looked like a championship team, the way they closed that game out on Tuesday night.
Give me a word on Shattenkirk here. I think he's come under fire from Caps fans, and I certainly, during the game, exchanged some texts with a Caps fan in our partnership here who talked about him and said, maybe he wasn't the right fit. Time will tell. It's early, but the early report on him so far, it hasn't been good yet, right?
Well, I think he's gonna be a great fit. I mean, I think he was starting to come into his game there, and he had assists in 4 straight games, and he's really dominant on the back end. And he's just such a good puck mover. He's that extra insurance. Say a Niskanen or a Carlson goes down, if they don't have Shattenkirk, they're done. So they need a guy like that. And it was a bad hit. I mean, you can't. The guy made one bad play. He doesn't have a history of doing it, and he got 2 games for it. But the Capitals are a better team with Kevin Shattenkirk on the back end. There's no doubt about it. And people. There's a lot of Nate Schmidt fans out there. They love him, but I like Nate Schmidt too. But there's certain matchups he just can't handle, and he had the goal last night. And if you look at that goal, that was actually going wide. It hit Eric Stahl and went back on net and went in. But he only played 12 minutes. I know Trotz likes him. A lot of fans like him. But his size is something that's a concern in the playoffs, and that's why he was scratched a few games last spring. So Chris Kreider certainly has his way with him, and so if they play the Rangers, not a good matchup. I mean, Carl Hagelin ran him over on a key goal in Game 6. So Schmidt is a guy that he's continuing to get better, but can you rely on him in the playoffs? That's still a concern. I think Dmitry Orlov has taken a lot of his concern away the way he's playing. Now, his game has come to a whole new level. So I'm really a big fan of the Shattenkirk deal. I think it's going to be a difference maker. And on the other hand, had the Caps not done that, he's wearing black and gold, and he's playing for Pittsburgh, making that chance to beat them even harder. So I was all for this move, and I think it will pan out.
He is Ed Frankovic. That's why you follow him out on Twitter. Caps historian and blogger here at WNST.net. He'll be at the game on Thursday night. The old friends come in, the Nashville Predators, and our old pal David Poyle will come in, and it'll be a night of wistful history for Barry Trotz, who sat behind that bench for many, many years. You say 700 wins. There's a lot of losses in there too, Ed, and a lot of late-night flights back from the West Coast where the Predators didn't fare so well as a youthful expansion team on the road. So if there's anything I know about Trotz is, there's plenty of water under the boat. Right? I don't think there's any panic in anyone's thoughts. But we're going to get with head coach Barry Trotz on Monday night. We'll be at Greenmount Station in Hampstead. We'll be swabbing for the bone marrow registry. Come on out. We got, Eddie, I had to laugh because we got Give a Spit, we got Nate Schmidt, and we got Shattenkirk, and we got to be careful around here because we have an FCC license, right?
That's right. Yeah, we got to keep it clean. This is an HBO, right?
You better watch your Schmidt. You know what I mean? You better be close with that. So get your Schmidt together. Make sure you have that going on. I am Nasty at WNST.net. We're out there doing it on the internet, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. Full Terps, full on, spring training, Ravens free agent news, all of it comes first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home, getting you ready for all things hoops, hoopology, bracketology, pizza, wing eating, beer drinking. I'm gonna be that guy this weekend. I'm going to have pizza and wings and beer. That's what I'm going to do for this basketball tournament this weekend. And I held the flight to San Jose, which means there's no chance. But I am going out to Arizona for the NFL owners meetings next week, so we're looking forward to that. And maybe some cacti baseball out in the Valley of the Sun. I love Phoenix, Arizona, so we'll get out there for that as well. Our London road trip is on sale. We have over 100 people signed up already. We have some room for you. Some new pricing. Just check it out. Go to the road trips tab at WNST.net. Toss me a note. We'll get on that right away. What else do we have here? Oh, the morning newspaper, 7 a.m. Delivers to your email inbox. Each and every morning, it's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. It's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life at Planet Fitness. And you can go to PlanetOfTriumphs.com and learn more there as well. We're in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault all week, all weekend. Download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you want to view or listen to WNST.net. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.